What is going on, Brooklyn Net fans? Hello, everyone. Welcome back here into another live edition of the Brooklyn Boys Show as we come to you guys right here on this Saturday, late afternoon, early evening, July 25th. Thank you all for hanging out with us. Be sure to hit like, hit subscribe on your way to the building. It is completely free and continues to help us grow right here on the channel. Questions, comments, thoughts, throw all of those in the chat. We're going to get to those throughout the course of the program. And joining me today here on the show, a very special guest, the head, whatever you want to call him, the czar, as I say, of NetsDaily, the great Bob Windrem joining us. Bob, thanks for taking the time as always. We're kind of at like the crossroads of the offseason where there are still a lot of decisions to be made, but they're going to be made sporadically, and there's no like clear-cut plan up till training camp. There are going to be signings and moves coming out of nowhere. They could happen right now. They could happen at 2 a.m. for all we know. So just playing the waiting game, if you will.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent that's true. I think also, though, most of the deals are done. I think the roster is pretty much set. I mean, you could have a surprise, and never say never if you've got cap space and draft assets, etc. And you could be making your own deal. You could be facilitating someone else's deal and getting assets, etc. But they have about $12 million in cap space left. They could probably get a bit more. They have not yet signed Mo Wagner. And they can either sign him out of cap space or sign him out of the MLE, because the MLE is about $9.4 million, and considering the deal that Wagner cut, he'd be making $9.2 million next year. So, there's some stuff left, but. On the other hand, I think there's one thing that everybody should remember, or not remember, but know, which is they do not see themselves as a contender. A point that was re-emphasized with LeBron's signing. The East is now the East. And so at this point, they're not crazy about using their assets on a team that's probably not going to make the playoffs, and rather would hold on to those assets, and maybe as soon as the deadlines start to make larger deals. I know there's a lot of impatience, and I can tell you, I know the franchise feels that impatience, but I don't think they're going to deter from their plan at this point.
You mentioned Mo Wagner there and the fact that they haven't made the signing official. In large part, it's been a quiet offseason. We saw the Randall trade the night before the draft. The draft happens. Keon Ellis, Mo Wagner, they agree on terms back-to-back days once free agency opens. But since then, it's really been quiet. I know there was that window in between the Randall trade being agreed upon and then when it was officially finalized that something could have happened there. Didn't really amount to much. With the Nets holding off on making the Wagner signing official, Bob, do you think there's maybe a free agent move or a trade of sorts? To what magnitude, maybe we don't know. Do you think that signals that maybe something is in the works for Brooklyn?
I wouldn't go that far. In talking to people, I think the idea is that they are happy in general with their roster, happy that they've been able to retain their assets, particularly the draft assets. I think that it's entirely possible, and I think the one indication of that, something could happen. And again, I'm not predicting it will. But the fact that Mo Wagner has not yet been signed is an indication they want to hold on to some wiggle room. And in terms of where or how they've been mentioned in deals, I think the only thing that really resonates, and I'm not sure that that it resonates very highly is the Peyton Watson speculation. I think that we have read everywhere that they are not listed among the teams that have an interest. But on the other hand, Peyton Watson has spent a week in New York with Michael Porter Jr., not just going to the World Cup final, not just going to Fan Fest with him, but visiting the Nets training facility, and in general, introducing him to New York. And I don't think you can dismiss that, or the fact that a week earlier than that, Watson was in the south of France with MPJ on a leased yacht celebrating his birthday. I think that you can look at it and say, well, this is just Michael Porter Jr. trying to help a friend get leverage, and let people think that the Nets are interested, and leaving some doubt. And Watson wants a certain amount of money from the Nuggets, and the Nuggets appear not ready to give him that. I don't think that there have been any communications going from Brooklyn to Denver. I'm pretty confident in that, but I would not be surprised as things get unraveled here, particularly in Denver, that you do see something. But there's all sorts of other issues that that we could get into. What's the fit, and does it slow development of the rookies? But on the other hand, at this point in time, you can look at things and say, let's see if we can make it work. Maybe the fit doesn't work, but we're not going to win a lot of games. We're not going to contend. Let's see what we can do. But again, I'm not sure that is on the agenda. I think if you ask me straight out if I think they're going to make another big deal before training camp opens, I would say at this point, no. But again, they always want to be opportunistic.
Absolutely. With Watson, I know people have mentioned the fit and things like that, and this might sound a little short-sighted, but with someone of his caliber, if he becomes available, just the sheer talent that he holds where the Nets are right now from a rebuild standpoint, turning 24 in September, the scoring ability, the size at 6'8", I don't think you can pass up the ability to add such a talented piece if the opportunity does present itself. I think you worry about fit later, how he slides into the starting lineup, how he kind of can complement and play alongside the rookies and the other pieces on this Brooklyn squad. But I think if you have a good opportunity to go ahead and add him to this roster, you can't bypass it, because the Nets aren't in a situation right now, in my opinion, where fit could be their priority when going after free agents and trying to better this roster and improve. And something you mentioned earlier on that I kind of want to circle back to, you talked about how the Nets aren't going to be contending this season. The LeBron trade to Philly only further proved how difficult the East is going to be this year. What does a successful season, and we'll talk about trade options in a little bit and maybe what Brooklyn could do for the rest of the offseason, but record-wise, what does a positive season look like for you for a team that just won 20 games and has lost over 100 combined these past two seasons?
The question, of course, is not what I see. The question is how they see it. And I think there's some division in there between the very optimistic Jordi Fernandez and the less optimistic staff. Let's put it that way, without getting into details. But I think probably 37 win season. I mean, you can go back and compare this rebuild to Sean Mark's first rebuild, where they won after a miserable year, and they won 21 and 28 games. And then 2018-19, the third year, which is analogous to right now. They won 42, got the sixth seed. Played very well in the first round against the 76ers, and there was a mix of kids and veterans and a rising star in D'Lo. And let me give you a little bit of history. I know that the analytics back then in 2018-19 had the team winning 37 games, and they ultimately won 42. So maybe that's what you can be looking at. But again, as you mentioned, the East is incredibly difficult. You have the reigning world champ. You have three teams that have added, potential Hall of Famers in Toronto adding Kawhi, and Philly adding Jaylen Brown as well as LeBron, and then you have the Heat adding Giannis. I mean,
the Pacers, who are going to be back in the picture again this year after kind of a year off with Halliburton being out.
Yeah, no, that too is true. I mean, they didn't get anybody new, but they're getting back one of the better players in the NBA with Halliburton. So I do believe that it's going to be a much tougher time than it was in 2018, 2019. And of course, the other analogy that you hope for is that at some point there's an opportunity. Hold on here. There's an opportunity, to get somebody bigger. And I don't know who it is, but I do know that the Nets, like every other team in the NBA, has an intelligence operation, so to speak, trying to figure out who's unhappy in a particular situation. Is there, what are the issues with ownership, etc. So you're going to see a bit of that. But if you're looking at the analogy of the first rebuild, then where you're at right now is 2018, 2019. Different in a number of ways. I mean, this team is much younger than that team. But I think there is an analogy that can be drawn there.
Talk about the current state of the roster right now, Bob. You have 8 guys on rookie contracts. A ninth who was drafted this year, and Tyler Bilodeau, who is going to be on a 2-way. And I mean, other than that, you look at their roster, and it's Michael Porter Jr., Julius Randle, who was just acquired, Daron Sharp, who was just re-signed, Josh Minott, who was just re-signed, and like that's pretty much the meat and potatoes of it. There are some other pieces in there. I'm intrigued to see where they fall. The Terrence Manns of the world, the Noah Clowneys. MPJ has been a huge talking point, really this whole offseason, but especially these past few days with some of the updates and what Sean Marks had to say out in Summer League. To boot, his agent was on Sirius XM NBA radio and talked about what he wants MPJ's future to look like, and how, look, Porter Jr. likes Brooklyn. He likes Jordy, to put it mildly. He's happy with the situation. He's taken the rookies under his wing. For me, Bob, just from like an opinionated standpoint, I know Marks went out in Vegas when he was speaking to the media, and I think the quote he used is, "We're not in a hurry to get a deal done." When you have a player like MPJ in your building who is coming off a career year after being acquired last summer, someone who has taken on a leadership role, I feel that the team should be in a hurry to get a deal done, in the sense of you want to reward talent who came in, exceeded expectations, took on a larger role. And I think a guy in MPJ who can have a really bright future long-term in Brooklyn and help this team not only get on the right track, but compete down the line.
I think the issue here is not so much money. I think it's length of contract. I don't know that, but that's, trying to read between the lines. I mean, he's eligible for 4 years and $234 million, which of course is not something that's going to happen. He can be signed to less money as well as a shorter term of his contract. And it can be creative. I mean, Yossi Goslin on Third Apron suggested that maybe what they do is they use that $9 million to give him a raise him up to $50 million for this season, and then extend out at a much lower salary, somewhere in the 30s. The question, I think, is whether it's going to be 4 years, which I'm sure is what he and his agent would like, or whether it's going to be 2 years with an option, 3 years, whatever. And I think that's the issue. And I think it's also important to note that in the past, where you had extensions on two critical players, Nick Claxton and then Cam Johnson, the Nets got those deals done very quickly. And those deals, by the way, were descending contract packages. This time, they have not yet. They have not yet gotten it done. They could have gotten it done June 19th. They don't have a deadline until next summer. They can extend him in the middle of the season if they want. They can extend him tomorrow. They can extend him, on July 4th weekend next year.
Yeah.
So there's options there, and they have met the representatives of the Nets and Porter Jr. We don't know what the progress is. But I think that Bartelstein, has said that, and of course I shouldn't say they've met. I should say they've talked. And the question is, at what level, over, and are there any things that have been settled? But certainly both Porter and his agent has said positive things about the fit in Brooklyn. And everybody is pleased with the way that that he has taken on the leadership role. And the most recent example is Memorial Day weekend, when he took 4 of the rookies to the Lake of the Ozarks in his native Missouri. And fishing trip and just getting away from it all. And those are all very positive things.
Yeah.
So, and he just turned 28. It's not as if he's 30, 32. But I think that's the main question at this moment, absent some surprise.
Terrence Mann, Noah Clowney, I kind of mentioned them a little bit ago as wild cards this season. Don't know what their role looks like, if they're still sticking around. I know there are 2 more years left on Mann's deal. It's $15 million guaranteed over the course of the next 2 seasons, whereas Clowney is on the final year of his rookie contract, slated to become a restricted free agent next summer. For you, do you think there are any odds that the Nets somehow get a deal done that involves moving one of Mann and or Clowney?
I think these are not guys, at least at this point, who are going to be key in any sort of trade. I think Terrence Mann has a very good reputation, but he also has $30 million that's owed to him. It's a lot of money. Clowney has been disappointing. He shows every once in a while, he would show spectacular skills, whether it's in 3-point shooting or shot blocking, but consistency is not there. Now, there's more than one benefit he would give in trade talks. He's still young. He's only 22. And the other thing is, he's fighting for a contract. He's fighting for his first big contract. So that he is going to be doing absolutely the best he can. At this point in time, I mean, he's going to be coming off the bench. And I think that, that's got to be something that weighs on his and his agent's mind.
Mhm.
But again, I'm not sure that there's going to be anything big coming down the pike. We're almost at August 1st. And you've got, if once Wagner is signed, you'll have 15 players under guaranteed contracts, plus two of the three two ways. So there's not a lot of wiggle room. I mean, you can bring 21 players into camp, or 20 players actually in October. And you can manipulate that. But I do think that, again, if I was a betting man, I would bet they're pretty close to being done.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Like Clowney, extension wise too, but trade talks. What is his value? I'm sure it depends on the team, and I mean, date back his draft was what 3 years ago now, so
Yes.
they have their own evaluations on him that are still probably
Yep.
pretty prevalent. You have the built-in excuse of, well, the Nets have not been a competent team, just wins and losses wise since
Yep.
he was drafted. So there's that. Maybe all he needs is a fresh start, and like you brought up an interesting point earlier on with Cam Johnson and Nick Claxton getting the extensions pretty quickly. Maybe waiting out with MPJ, Bob, is a sign of something new, because the Claxton extension, debatable at the time, but we all know how the Cam Johnson one ended up playing out that actually helped yield the Nets MPJ. So
Yes.
I'm fascinated to see what the remainder of the offseason looks like. I think OKC, I saw Lou Dort was a player the Nets were interested in. I know that had been reported. Is there any more movement there? We'll see. But at the end of the day, the Nets are a team that has Sean Mark's favorite words still: flexibility and opportunity. So
Yeah.
they have a lot of wiggle room still. I think a lot of what they do this season, though, is going to be key just in terms of how they build for the future, because Houston has the pick next year in terms of a swap.
Yes.
So it's going to be
and it's a bad draft.
exactly.
It's
Yeah,
still
like
a bad
we're
draft. Right.
for sure. And like with the Nets situation right now, it's so tough, right? Because I could see a world where you said it earlier on, they're a 37 win team and like they're competitive in that 9 to 11 seed range. But also, when I look up and down the East, Bob, and how competitive it could be this year, I also see a world where they could literally finish near or at dead last. It's just, I don't know. There's such a big discrepancy between the ceiling and the
Look,
floor. This season.
it's the absolute key to everything is how the two lottery picks perform. They look great in Sacramento in one game. They look great in 3 games in Las Vegas, particularly Yegor. I mean, I don't want to say he looked like a different player, but as somebody said to me the other day, he is exactly what we thought he was going to be by year 2. They anticipated that he would get stronger. They anticipated that he'd be touching the paint more. The rookie year, they expected him to develop his shot because they believed in his shot. But this year, this is exactly what they thought he would be. And to me, virtually nothing else is close to what those two guys do. And I think that if they turn out to be Brooklyn's backcourt for the future, well then, that's a huge step forward.
Sure.
And you look around and you hope that Clowney gets more consistent. You hope that Randall and MPJ bring more maturity. You hope that Minot is a diamond in the rough. You hope that Ellis is Lou Dort light. He may not be as strong, nowhere near it, but he can shoot. He's as good a 3-and-D shooter. In fact, he has the best career percentage on the Nets at 40.7%. And I don't know what Wagner is going to be like.
Yeah.
But and then the other thing, I think that if you're looking at the starting lineup, you say, well, that's pretty interesting. That's an interesting starting lineup. But you get beyond the starting lineup, particularly on offense, and it's a vast desert down there.
That it is.
I mean, if you look at that roster, the bench, you're looking at two guys who might be able to come off the bench and jumpstart an offense. And that's Clowney and Minot. Clowney has been a disappointment, and Minot is looking for a second chance. And maybe that'll work, but you get beyond that, and then you're hoping for you're hoping beyond hope in terms of offense.
For sure.
I mean, Wagner can do some things. 2 years ago, before he got hurt, he looked like he was improving his 3-point shot. He's a tough player. He's physical, and they've added some physicality this summer, which is a big positive. But and Jordy will take care of defense, aided by Dutch Gately, who I thought did a terrific job in summer league. And I think that if you have confidence in Jordy Fernandez, maybe you'll do better than 37%. But if Michael Brown gets banged around as a in his first year and gets hurt or whatever, and takes a year to develop, well, then things are going to be going the other way. And we talked earlier about what are their best trade assets. You mentioned Clowney and Man as players who could be traded, but their best assets, quite obviously, is the draft picks.
And MPJ if they elect to go that route.
And MPJ if they elect to go that route. But one of the things that I've asked is, and people say, well, MPJ can get you another first rounder.
Oh,
how many more first rounders do you need?
Yeah. And who's going to replace his scoring? Like, think of it this way, Bob. If he gets traded and you trade him for a first rounder or two,
right,
you lose so much scoring and leadership in that starting lineup. Like, who is going to replace him? Is Minot going to be your starting small forward? Like, you can't roll into the season.
No, is it Minot? Is it Clowney? I mean, I don't see
Jefferson.
That. Yeah, I mean, I think their best asset right now is probably, and I'm just, I don't have things sitting in front of me, but the 2028, their own 2028 first, and their own 29 first are probably the best assets they have right now, as well as, and this is a particular attraction to Denver, the Nuggets unprotected 2032 first, because the calculus is by then Jokic will be 37 and the team will be on the downside, and the Kroenkes don't spend a lot of money, so that is also a big asset, and and then you just have how many there are. And you have the Knicks picks.
Yes.
That's their assets. And if you are looking at a team that is trying to move somebody to stay under the one apron or the other, having those picks is going to be a positive, because you trade that player, whether it's a sign and trade or trade, and you get back picks which have no cap value. So you've saved some money. I mean, it's a salary dump. I mean, Julius Randle was a salary dump. I mean, let's face it. just as MPJ was a salary dump.
Yeah.
I mean, Claxton was time, and a number of other points that you can make. But that's the sort of thing that they can be looking for. But again, and I keep reiterating this, they have said they don't want to be a sixth seed. That's not the plan. They don't want to make moves in order to be a fifth or sixth seed. And by the way, it'd be pretty impossible. Let me rephrase that. It'd be pretty tough to go from 20 wins to a sixth seed. So
yeah, which is going to be like 50
patience
wins this year.
Yeah, you ask for patience again. A lot of fans thought that they were going to, make big moves this summer, and they didn't. And that was a disappointment. But they're happy with the draft picks. They're not just happy with Brown Jr. They're very happy in getting Joshua Jefferson at 28. I mean, they see him as a steal. So they're happy with what happened on draft night. They're happy with the development. They may not be happy with the three members of the Flatbush Five who did not perform that well. Although I think Sarif gets a bad rap. I thought he played pretty well, considering what his role was. But both Powell and Wolf, regressed in some ways. But what they'll tell you is they need more time, and we have the luxury of giving them time because their salaries are so low as rookie contracts. That we can wait another year. We can give them an extension in October for the third year, and it won't cost us that much, and we'll see if they can develop. So, I think that all of those things. I mean, it's difficult within fan context to say they're happy, but they don't see themselves as contenders. They're happy with the progress they've made, particularly, but they don't see themselves in the contending role. I do think, based on what I hear, that you'll probably see them have a more active trade deadline than they've had in the past. I mean, Sean Marks does most of his deal making is around the draft, and there's good reason for that because there's more assets available around the draft, and everybody works that way. But I can be surprised. I have been surprised. I eschew using the trade machines because Sean Marks has been involved in multiple team deals, in 4-team deals, in 6-team deals, in a 7-team deal.
Last year.
Yeah, exactly. And the Dinwiddie deal was a 6-team deal, and the Harden deal was a 4-team deal, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty hard to build an algorithm that is going to be accurate on 4 and 5 and 6 6-team deals. I think for the fans are disappointed. I'm disappointed. All right. But I think the reality is there ain't no rebuild that's 2 years long. I mean, the tank, as I have written, the tank is over. The rebuild is not. And you also have to try to determine how attractive the franchise is at this point among not just free agents, but unhappy players who would like to be moved.
Franz Wagner, Mo's brother, Apollo Banchero, guys of that nature, as you said.
Yeah, and you have to look at Peyton Watson's trip to New York as a positive in that regard. That I don't know, and and I've speculated wildly on what all those recruiting, quote unquote, was about. But it doesn't appear that he's resistant to New York. Not when you spend a week in New York doing all sorts of things,
Yeah.
all sorts of New York things. And and I found it particularly interesting that he wound up at the HSS Training Center, and here's why. The training center for the Nuggets in Denver is not very good. It is not among the first rank. When MPJ came here a year ago, you may remember, he got a tour, which was videotaped and which he put on his vlog, of him walking around the training center. And the first thing he pointed out was that, oh, there's 2 practice courts here in Brooklyn. There was only 1 practice court in Denver. I mean, this is a team that won the NBA championship 3 years ago. And their practice facility has 1 practice court. And that goes to the Kroenkes, who have the biggest sports empire in the world, overseas, who are the largest single private landholders in the United States.
Wow.
They have not been spending a lot of money.
Yes.
And the fact that the Nets are willing to spend a lot of money and have spent a lot of money on player amenities, Liberty the same. That is a big thing. People dismiss fans dismiss that. Well, this is the place you go to work every day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's New York City, and New York is having a spectacular summer. Whether you include the Knicks or not. But I do think that that is a positive sign. And we don't know if the Nets and LeBron even spoke. LeBron did speak to the Knicks, who apparently said, sorry, not interested. And I'm sure there are a couple of others. But again, they weren't going to make a big move this offseason because they do not see themselves as a contender. And there is no evidence that they're unwilling to spend money. I mean, that's a double negative, meaning they're willing to spend money. And there's been plenty of evidence of that in a variety of different ways. But, they're in the waiting game. And as I said, tank is over, but the rebuild isn't. And maybe you get lucky like you did in 2018-19, and you have a good season and you become attractive to world-class players. I mean, we don't yet know that. We don't know just how attractive they are. I mean, what they will tell you off the record is that that's not a worry for them. That they see themselves as very attractive, and in part because of New York, and part because of player amenities. I had one big agent say to me, every team says that it's player centric, but there's only about 4 teams who actually walk the walk, and he identified the Nets as one of them. And there's little things and there's big things that they wind up doing for players. So there's that, and I can't gauge that. I mean, I would love to hear a player be asked about that. But and the final point, I think, looking ahead this year is health is always an issue.
Yep.
And when you've got young guys, and you've got I mean, particularly Brown Jr., who I don't want to call him a waif, but he's he's not yet fully developed physically, who could get banged around. So you want to make sure that you factor that into to your and I'm talking about fans, factor that into your calculations. But you know, going into this season will be interesting. It will be interesting, and we see this in everywhere on NetsDaily. The interest rising, the engagement level, the number of followers, the number of comments. I'll give you a fun fact. The three largest number of comments on anything that NetsDaily has ever written were: one, the KD trade with more than 4,000 comments; two, the Paul Pierce Kevin Garnett trade, which had like 2,300 comments; and the Mo Wagner signing, which had 2,200 comments. And obviously, which doesn't belong and why. But the point here is this: there is a level of engagement that we haven't seen. I mean, I was talking to Pooch the other day, and he said there have been like 8 stories where we've had 1,000 comments, which is extraordinary. I never thought we'd get to that number. And this comes after the Knicks win the championship, and after the parade, and after the Mamdani speech. And yet the numbers are growing. And somebody asked me the other day why I thought that, somebody inside. And I said, to a certain degree, the fans are mobilizing around all this crap that they're irrelevant. I mean, the hardline fans, the hardcore fans, which is who comes to NetsDaily. We don't get a lot of casual fans.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think is that the Knicks championship also raised interest in the general NBA, and basketball. And obviously the biggest beneficiary by far, is going to be the New York Knicks, and deservedly so. I'm not going to begrudge them their championship run, which was extraordinary, or Jalen Brunson, who had one of the great closeout games of all time. But there may be a little not crossover, but leftover effect, however you want to call it. I mean, because we're seeing it. I mean, we're at an all-time high in Twitter followers. I expected after the Knicks won that the Twitter followers would drop off. The reverse happened. They went up. So fans are engaged, and I think that's something that's a positive as well. And as Pooch wrote the other day, the summer league performances went a long way in that.
Yeah. I mean, if Michael just bombs and Yegor doesn't look as great as he did, I don't think we're seeing this level of optimism or engagement as you've spoken about.
But again, those two guys to me are the absolute critical elements of where they're going. They're not going to get, barring some trade or some luck or whatever, they're not going to get a pick that high again. Certainly not in the next couple of years. A Knick pick in 29 to 31 might be high because they're going to have to rebuild. And the Nuggets pick, in 2032 could be high because Jokic will have retired probably by then at age 37. So this was their opportunity. These two guys were their opportunity. Lottery luck failed. By the way, I was talking to somebody the other day who said that internally that the Nets really loved Caleb Wilson. So that's a positive.
Yeah.
But I think that this is the opportunity. Those trades that they made on June 24th or 25th of 2024 are the absolute centerpiece of what's going forward. They got the 5 Knick picks. They exchanged the picks so they could get their lottery picks back. They didn't have the luck that they wanted. They didn't get VJ Edgecombe. They didn't get Caleb Wilson, but they got Yegor and they got, Michael. And
Yep.
maybe those two picks together are equal to what some of those teams did over a 2-year, course. I don't know, but that's why there is, in my opinion, this level of intensity, this level of, dare I call it, optimism. And there's a reason they play the games. And
Yep.
I've just stopped looking at power rankings, at FanDuel, rankings, and I mean, I used to pay a lot more attention to that stuff, but then I realized, they're all it's guesswork until they actually get on the court and start dribbling and shooting the ball. So we're going to have to see. But again, I think, as I've said, my bet would be they're basically done for this season. If they do something, it'll probably be something that hasn't evolved yet. And I do think that I do think you cannot dismiss Peyton Watson spending a week in New York with the best player on your team. I just you can't dismiss it for a number of reasons. But so I'll throw that caveat in there. Or maybe they get lucky. I mean, maybe Josh Minot, is who he believes himself to be. Maybe Noah Clowney takes off because he understands this is the year for him. And maybe Julius Randle, wants to prove something, which he certainly does in New York City. And on the other side, maybe Drake Powell and Danny Wolf don't make progress.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you hit on Yegor and Michael, and one of those four, throw in Joshua Jefferson and make it 5.
Yeah,
that's an added bonus. Thank you all for joining us right here on the channel. Hit like, hit subscribe. Appreciate the continued support right here on the show. Bob, fun episode as always. Thanks so much for taking the time. Final thoughts, Nets related, non-Nets related, anything before we wrap things up?
No, I think you do a very good job, and I think people are foolish if they don't subscribe. There.
I appreciate that. We got that might have to get added into the show intro. Bob Windrem's endorsement.
Exactly.
Appreciate the kind words. Thanks for hanging out with us as always right here in the program. Thank you all. Hit like, hit subscribe. Let us know your thoughts if you're watching after the fact in the comments section down below. Appreciate you all. Have a great rest of your day. For Bob, I'm Connor saying, let's go Nets, baby. See you next time.